Another problem that we have in agriculture are GMOs. And I actually don't really want to call it a problem because it's not so much a problem, but we'll talk about that soon. So our GMOs are genetically modified organisms. Typically people think of this as our crops and the food that we eat, but really it's anything that we change genetically. We've changed bacteria, we've changed animals, so all of those things are included, but at least for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to talk about it in reference to agriculture. Now these are genetically made, meaning they have to be done in a lab by scientists. This is doing things at the molecular scale, so using microscopes, using really expensive and fancy equipment. But this is changing the DNA of an organism. For example, this is a picture of a purple rose. A purple rose is not a naturally occurring organism. Instead, what scientists did is they took the purple trait from a pansy, which is a plant, or a different kind of flower, and they inserted that DNA into the DNA of this rose, so that this rose now had the code, or the genes, in order to create that purple coloring. So making a GMO, or a genetically modified organism, uses recombinant DNA. So you think of regular DNA, but recombinant is referring to, let me get my pen out, recombinant is referring to recombining. So you can see that right here. So recombine or recombine. We're taking DNA from one organism and adding it to the DNA of another organism. Here is an example. This is taking the DNA out of a bacteria and putting it into a plant DNA. So here's that bacteria. And what we've done is we've cut the bacteria open. So we've cut it right here. Then we took the gene that we were interested in from the other organism. So we have two DNAs here. Here's the DNA from one organism. Here's the DNA from a second organism. And you can actually cut and paste DNA. Obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, but the basic principle is there. DNA is the same no matter what living organism you're looking at, whether it's a bacteria, a mushroom, a plant, or even humans. That DNA has the same exact structure. So DNA can be cut and pasted pretty easily. It is then inserted, this new DNA is inserted into a plant cell, and this DNA will then incorporate with the DNA inside of this plant. And so now we have, here's this DNA, here's this cool new plant, or cool new piece of DNA from another organism. And so now this plant over here has its regular DNA, that's why it looks like a plant, but now it has a gene in it from another organism. So if this was that rose, for example, this gene could have been the purple gene. We've used this bacteria just to kind of help move it. We're using the bacteria to essentially deliver this gene into the plant. I know I have arrows everywhere, so let me use a different color just to show this again real quick. So let's say we are looking at purple coloring inside of a rose. So here we have a bacteria. Bacteria acts as the middleman. Here we have the DNA containing the gene of interest. So this is going to be purple, which is from the pansy plant. We're going to put this gene that we're interested in into the bacteria. And the reason we do that is the bacteria can easily infect a plant cell. And when it infects the plant cell, it's going to carry this purple gene, so kind of coloring this in. It's going to carry that purple gene into this new plant. This rose plant is infected with the bacteria, and the bacteria releases that DNA. This DNA then comes incorporated into this rose's DNA. And now that rose has the DNA, it has the genetics to make that purple coloring. So this is the basic premise of every genetically modified organism. We can make kittens and pigs that glow in the dark because we used a glow-in-the-dark gene that jellyfish have. If you just Google image that, you will find tons of really cool pictures. But we also do it with our crops. Now, it's not all crops. When people think of GMOs, they think like everything in the grocery store is GMOs. It is and it isn't. So there's only a handful of vegetables that are actually GMOs, and you should definitely know these. And I'm going to point out the big ones. The big ones being soy. So yes, we eat soy kind of directly, so tofu, soy sauce, any kind of soy milk, for example. But soy is really used for feeding animals, particularly feeding cows, chickens, goats, sheep, any kind of thing that we eat. A lot of them are eating soy. So we might not be eating the soy directly, but at least indirectly through the animals we eat. It's the same thing with corn. Most of the corn that we actually eat, like corn on the cob, is not GMO. But most of the corn that our animals are eating, such as chickens and pigs, etc., that is GMO corn. Cotton, thinking about the cotton that you are wearing right now. Canola, so canola oil, things that you may fry things in. Sugar beets, we do not eat sugar beets. However, we do get sugar from sugar beets. So a lot of that sugar is genetically modified. Papaya, zucchini, and yellow squash, a lot of these are genetically modified. But that's about it. So most of the stuff that we're eating, the fruits and vegetables you're eating, are not genetically modified. That apple you're eating is an apple. There's no DNA from any other organism inside that apple. However, what I will say is our packaged foods. So think about noodles, think about cereals, think about really anything you buy in the middle of the store. About 80% of that food has at least one GMO ingredient. At least it has some sort of corn or cornmeal. It may have used canola oil. It may have used some sort of soy product or sugar. So most of our products will have GMOs in them. So although the fresh fruits and vegetables you eat might not be genetically modified, the other processed foods that you eat more than likely are. Why use them though? Why, if you think about the rose, having a purple rose, that's cool. But why do we do it for our food? Obviously, we're not trying to turn our food purple. So there's a couple different reasons. The first one, and one of the most important ones, is built-in pesticides. So here we have two pictures of corn. The corn on the top is natural corn, not genetically modified. And grown literally right next to it was genetically modified corn. And you can see a huge difference here. So what they inserted was some DNA from a fungi. This fungi has the natural ability to kill these pests. So they just inserted it into this corn plant. And you can see it's pretty effective. This is important for farmers because they're not losing their crops, but also important to consumers because we have crops to eat. Some other reasons that aren't as big or not as used as much, you can add nutrition. So you can add genes that create vitamin A, vitamin B, etc. Things to resist drought, disease, and disease. So if you can make your corn last when there's not a lot of rain, or if there's a disease that's coming through, that again increases production. It can help longer the shelf life. So essentially making it that corn, when it's being sold, it can last on the shelf. It's not going to start decaying quickly. This is important for stores selling these types of crops, and also for humans. If we buy corn today, but we don't use it until next week, we want to make sure that it's still good by next week. And also herbicide resistance. And what I mean by that is, let's say we have our cornfield. So here's our corn. And in between it, we're growing lots of different weeds. Now weeds, in and of itself, they're fine, but they can take sunlight, they can take water, they can take nutrients away from our crops. So what farmers do is they spray herbicides, because what they want to do is kill all of these weeds. They want to make sure that their crops are getting the most amount of nutrition as possible. But one of the herbicides they use would actually kill everything. It would kill the corn and the weeds and everything else in that field. So they've made genes to put into the corn that actually make them resistant to this herbicide. So you can spray the herbicide all around. It's going to kill all of those weeds, but these corns have a natural deterrent, or I shouldn't say natural, it's genetic, a genetic deterrent that actually prevents them from dying from this herbicide. So it's actually really, really interesting. So the reason we're doing this isn't because cool, science, let's do things. It actually does have a benefit to us as the consumer, as well as the person who's creating the corn, so the different farmers. We also have genetically modified foods, animal foods. They are not as, prevalent. So here, this fish, this is actually new. It's not on the market yet. It should be actually next year. It was just approved by the FDA in 2016. Yeah, 2016. It was just approved by the FDA to be sold. This is a salmon species that has the DNA of about 2 or 3 other species. These species, or these genes, allow the fish to grow bigger and grow faster. So in this picture, these two fish are actually the same exact age, grown in the same exact area. But this is the GMO fish that has been designed to grow bigger and faster. You can also design animals to be disease resistant, similar to our crops. And in cows, we've actually have some genetically modified cows that increase their milk production. So again, the purpose of all of these is really to help humans. It's in order to increase our yield in order to feed more people.